We are under attack. How many of you looked at the paper or you heard on the news that the Reclaim Idaho has just started getting signatures on their petition? So how many of you know that? If anybody comes up to you and wants you to sign that petition, say no. I believe in one man, one vote. And I believe that I don't want our elections any more confusing than they've been made over the past few years. So please avoid that. But what's really interesting in the papers, they said, well, can you believe the chair of the party, Dorothy Moon, would have the audacity to bring that rascal, Sarah Palin, governor of Alaska, candidate for vice president in 2008 with John McCain? How dare she bring him here when we're collecting signatures today? Well, you know what, folks? I think it's Providence. I cannot believe that on the same day that we had already scheduled Sarah Palin to come into this beautiful event center, and it just happens it was the weekend that we could use this event center, the 19th of this month. So they're getting signatures on petitions, and we're starting the war. We are not going to allow ranked choice voting to pass in this state. All right? So that is the main focus of this meeting, and I am excited. I'm going to have Frank Vandersloot come up and share a few words about his concerns with ranked choice voting, and then we'll get to our main speaker. But Frank, I'd sure appreciate you coming up and sharing your thoughts. Thank you.
The deeper I got into it, the more confusing it got, and that's the whole idea. I've always been against ranked choice voting. From the standpoint of I'm a results kind of guy. I like good results. And I see the two states that have used it on a national scale, in Alaska and Maine, I saw what they got. In a very conservative state, Alaska, their Senator Murkowski, who ran under the banner of being a Republican, often votes with the Democrats. And you say, and the same thing with Senator Collins in Maine. They run under the banner of being a Republican, but when it comes to voting, they often vote with the Democrats. And that's all I needed to know. I saw the result, and so I've been opposed to it. But then Dorothy asked me to speak about it, and so I thought I'd better get more educated and ask myself, why? Why does ranked choice voting always push the candidates that are on the left? Why do the liberals always win? And so I tried to get myself educated. It's been tougher than I thought it would be because everybody I talked to understood it in a little bit of a different way. But I got the gist of it, and I'm going to try to simplify it in just a few minutes. I've only have a few minutes. You didn't come here to hear from me, but I thought I found it interesting, and now and beneficial, because now I understand why the Democrats and the liberals always win under this process. And I'll explain it this way. And if you're confused when I'm done, then I've made my point. So let's suppose there's just three candidates, because if you're going to have ranked choice voting, if you have two candidates, you don't need that. You got a winner and you got a loser, okay? But there are often not just two. There's often more than two candidates. So that's where they convince people, well, wouldn't it be better if if you were heard? That's their story. We want everybody to be heard. And this is how and you think people just have one vote? And Dorothy kind of referred to it. No, they got lots of votes, especially if their candidate wins, because they get to keep voting if their candidate wins. This is how it works. Let's say there's three candidates. Candidate A, that's your candidate. That's the conservative candidate, and you want the conservative candidate. That's your guy. Candidate B, that's the liberal. You know you don't want the liberal to win. And then you got candidate C. Candidate C is a nothing burger. Nobody knows nobody really recognizes them. They're not in the fight. They're not like going toe to toe. They didn't make any enemies. Maybe that they're just like nobody knows for sure who they are. But when it comes to ranked choice voting, then you're asked on the ballot, who's your first choice? Well, I want candidate A. Who's my second choice? Well, I sure as heck don't want that liberal. I'm going to put That's going to be my third choice. That's my last choice, but B is my third choice. And what's left, C is my second choice. Guess what? The other side did the same thing. They want B. The liberals want the liberal. They sure as heck don't want the conservative. And so, who's their second choice? The nothing burger over here. Nobody really knows what he stands for. He's not really taking a position. He's not a leader. He doesn't take a stand. He's friends to everybody. A good old boy. He gets the second choice of the B's also. And so let's say your candidate didn't quite get over the hill. He didn't get the majority. He got 46% of the vote. What's that leave? 54%? That's 27% each. The other two candidates, let's say one got 28 and one got 25%. I don't know if that's exactly the math, but let's just say. And your guy got 46%. You think you won the election? No, not so fast. If you got ranked choice voting, then they take another look. What they do is they drop the bottom guy off. And let's say the bottom guy in this case was actually the liberal. The liberal lost, so who's left? Well, you think you won. You didn't, because the people that voted for B, they had a second choice too. And since their candidate got kicked off, their second choice gets voted for candidate C as your first choice. So they change, they keep you in the game. So now candidate C's got he's got your second place, because that's where you put him. He's got B's second choice, and then he got some first place votes besides. And so he ends up winning the election over the conservative. And that's how it always works. Now, if that's confusing to you, we'll try working it out if you got 8 candidates running. And then you do all the math and you switch. Well, this guy lost, so now we got to take everybody who voted for him, and you got to take their second choices and you move them over him. And that puts him up here. Wait a second now. And so then you run it again and then say, who lost that vote? And then you thought, like, if you lost the vote, you'd be out of the voting, but you're not. Their vote's just elevated to the other guy. You understand? And then who figures that all out during election night? Well, they give it to the computers. What if there's a computer? What if there's a computer glitch? What if? And you can't trace it. You can't track it. You think we had computer problems with just 2 candidates? What does that look like? The end result is all you got to remember. Because then there's different ways I learned this. There's this way and there's that way, and I got to argue this way and that way. There's lots of ways to cut it. But what I just told you was the basics on how it works. All you have to look at is the end result. The liberals win. We're a conservative state. If you want to keep Idaho red and not turn it pink and then purple and then blue, then we better stop this ranked choice voting deal. It's going to take a lot of explaining to do it. As I just demonstrated to you, it's hard to explain. But we've really got to take a strong stand against it. They're going to put a lot of money for it. It's how they capture a conservative state, and we got to stop it. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sarah Palin.
I feel like I'm home.
You are home.
I am.
You are home.
Where it all started.
This is my mic? Okay, I will.
Okay.
Is it working? Okay, this
Mine
is great.
too. Thank you.
So we're going to sit and talk because there's so much to talk about. And of course, we're going to start at the beginning. You were born in Sandpoint. I do know that. And I know you went to the University of Idaho and graduated with a degree in journalism.
Journalism and political science, yep.
Okay, that's probably a good degree to have.
It was irrelevant, though. What's going on today in politics, you can't learn that from a book, believe me.
That's right. That's right. You can't.
It's crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, that is. So I'm going to go back a little ways. So we know that you ran in 2008 for vice president. And without a doubt, how many of you remember that debate with Joe Biden? You know, it was momentous on how you carried yourself. I actually watched it again the other day, you know, and I loved it as much the other day as I did that long ago. And what was some of the famous lines? Tell me it ain't so, Joe.
yeah.
That was my favorite one. And then putting lipstick on Bulldog, or what were you?
Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something like that. Hockey mom, or
Yes.
soccer mom. Anyway, that was one of the most interesting debates I've ever seen. And look at Joe now. I'd love to see you debate Joe now. That'd be a lot of fun.
I would, because I've never rewatched the debate, but I remember walking off the stage going, why was I so nice? Because, he needed to be held to account for a lot of things, and he still is not held to account. So, yeah, if I had to do it over again, heck yeah.
Yeah, but you did very well, and I appreciate that. But it wasn't until 2010. And that's when the genesis of the Tea Party, and a lot of you remember that. We had Obama coming in, getting ready to socialize our medicine. Taxes were off the charts. The world just seemed crazy to anybody who was a Republican and a conservative at the time. And I remember meeting you in Nashville. And let's see, you were getting up to speak, and the likes of Andrew Breitbart was there. Yes, and Steve Bannon was there. And that was kind of when all of them really started getting started in the liberty movement. Right. But the thing I really remember was that you wrote things on your hands to keep you on track. How many of you remember that the press came out and said, she had words on her hands, no paper, and you got crucified? And I remember that very well, too. And I thought you were an amazing speaker then, and I think you led the way for a lot of liberty groups in getting started, and actually it's probably held. And I remember once it was at Frank's, it was an event with Trevor Loudon. And Trevor Loudon said it was at your other building, and he said if it wasn't for the Tea Party back in 10, that we would have been a lot further down the road with socialism and communism and whatever. It would have been a lot worse. So thank you for holding things at bay with those other hooligans or extremists that you were in the room with. But anyway, so we're going to start talking about a lot of the things that are going on. So these are some questions that came up. Now, you've been very visible on TV a lot, and especially in exposing Alaska. So you did move to Alaska as a young girl. Can you explain how Alaska has really developed your political thought, your work ethic, and everything else? And we've seen a lot of it on TV, but can you tell the audience about that?
I really appreciate my Idaho roots and my Alaska roots, because our states are very similar when it comes to the people. Hardworking, ethical, following the golden rule, family first, America first. So many similarities. So I've really appreciated my upbringing. And I got involved in politics in Alaska because there was a lot of crony capitalism going on with oil companies. They were literally buying votes. Our legislators were so blatant about allowing the oil companies to impact their votes on our natural resource development issues. And I watched what was going on. Our guys were so blatant about it. They actually wore baseball caps, a group of them, it was CBC embroidered on, and it stood for Corrupt Bastards Club. And they wore those. They were proud of it because nobody was calling them on it, and they were corrupt. And some of them ended up going to jail. So knowing that it wasn't right, especially when it comes to natural resources, God has dumped into North America for responsible use of mankind the richest reserves of oil and gas and minerals and timber, everything that Idaho, oh my gosh, the resources that you all have here, especially the minerals, it's a shame that too many things are getting shut down. But especially when it comes to natural resources, I would look at this going, wait, those are the people's resources. God gave them for our responsible use, not for the crony capitalism that was going on, not for this corruption that is going on. So got involved a long time ago and have stayed involved on a national level because, it goes back to when Barack Obama was running for president, and I had already accepted the nomination from the GOP running for vice president, and Barack Obama announced just a few days before the election, before we voted, he said, "We're just days away from fundamentally transforming America." And that stuck with me because you only fundamentally transform something for which you have disdain. You want to crush it. You want to dissolve it, get rid of it, and then build up something in its place that is not the same. So knowing that that was articulated, they told us what they were going to do. Watching them do it with all these steps that they're taking. So the slope that we're on, the trajectory that's going downhill too rapidly, I knew that I needed to stay involved. When you have somebody who has, well, let me invoke President Trump even. When you got nothing to lose, because you look at like the press, you think, well, what more can they do to me? What more can they say about my kids? Or what more can they try to crucify me for or lie about or whatever? You got nothing to lose, so you have everything to gain by just fighting for what is right, for serving, for manifesting that servant's heart in you. So knowing that, and that's Trump at this point too. He's got nothing to lose except a country to lose, but not personally, because look at everything that they're doing. So it's people like that, and then just on a tiny, much lower level, I felt the same way. It's like, I've got nothing to lose. Of course I'm going to stay in there. And I want to help and empower and encourage other people to stay in there. What I find is so many people, you guys are all involved. You're in the arena. You're interested in what's going on in your communities, your state, in our nation. And you want to positively affect what's going on, obviously, because you're here. You could be anywhere else tonight. But a lot of people, good, hardworking, patriotic people, they're sitting back expecting somebody else to do the work for them. A lot of them feel like they don't have a voice, and that's understandable. They don't understand that there are different forms and formats, and you don't need a title, you don't need an office to get out there and make a difference. But too many people are sitting back, not liking what is going on, not liking the transformation of America, knowing that we need a fundamental restoration of the good things about America. But they're sitting back and they're waiting for somebody else to do the job. And I want to thank you guys for being interested in it enough to be in the arena. But what we all have to do is stay in there. I've been blessed with the platform. And I don't take it for granted. And everybody has their own role, their own part in all of this, in taking back what is good about America and restoring it. But I want to encourage all of you to empower others around you also, so that there are fewer and fewer people thinking that somebody else is going to do the job for them. And that's why I've stayed in politics.
And what you say is true. Okay, so the grassroots are obviously so important, as they were even back in the Tea Party days and before that with other groups that had come about. But it's the grassroots that I'm seeing activated. Now, becoming chair of the party, I have noticed that I just got a call from the chairman in Nebraska, and he said, Dorothy, North Carolina just flipped for liberty. Kansas has flipped for liberty. Arkansas has flipped for liberty. And what I mean by flip for liberty is that all of the officers on the executive committee are grassroots people. So the Midwest is really moving very much so toward the grassroots. And I do see it here a lot, despite the fact, the negative press. So we can talk about that a little bit. They try to throw the talking points at you and hoping they will stick, this label lynching, as we call it here in Idaho, that trying to make it look like that we're just extremists. The problem is none of us have moved away from the Republican Party. It's just moved more to the left. And I think there's people that are just having a hard time. In fact, whoever's running the video, can someone just happen to show that clip that was just taken today of Reclaim Idaho talking about what ranked choice voting is going to help them do?
What you're going to hear from conservatives is, this is just a liberal plot from California. Well, this is when you remind them that ranked choice voting in open primaries is in Alaska, it's in Maine, it's in Utah, it's in a lot of places around the country. Now, from the other side, you're going to hear that, oh no, all we're going to do is elect more moderate Republicans. And the reality is, yes, we will. And that's good for Idaho.
So more or less, if you're moderate, you're a Democrat. They're very bold about what they're doing. In fact, Lynn Bradsky right here, she was telling me she had a phone call from a neighbor. They are walking door to door over downtown Boise getting signatures today. Wow. And you're here. Gosh,
Yeah.
You triggered them.
Right,
they are
yeah.
triggered. They're trying to raise money off the fact that you're here, but we're going to raise money off the fact that you're here too, because the war's on.
We're on the right side. And this ranked choice voting, you guys, don't let it slither into your state. It's the worst. It's the worst kind of voting. It's kind of everyone gets a trophy, participation, process of elimination type of voting, where it's not one man, one vote. It's not winner take all. It's not healthy competition. It's an orchestrated and convoluted and complicated voting system. Alaska adopted it a couple years ago. We were sold a bill of goods. It was on a ballot, and enough people voted for it because the sound bites were the cliches that were used all the time to sell it. This is how you keep dark money out of politics. This is how you have your fair elections. And, oh, well, it sounded good. It's the antithesis of that because it is dark money funding that. You guys got to follow the money, connect the dots as to who's funding the drive here also in Idaho to get this ranked choice voting. It is, as a candidate, having gone through it, our congressman, Alaska's a young enough state where we only had the one congressman, Don Young, forever and ever, since our beginning of time, and he had passed away. So last year, somebody needed to fill a seat. We had an election, and it was the first election where we would use ranked choice voting. I didn't like it from the start because I did enough research on it where I saw that there are 14 really liberal enclaves across the nation. They're the ones that had ranked choice voting. San Francisco and Maine and some very liberal cities. And that was quite telling to me, that something was amiss there. So I ran under ranked choice voting. We had 50 candidates in there because you do away with primaries. It's a jungle primary is what it is. Everybody throws their name out there. But out of the 50 candidates, I won by a lot. And so everybody thought, oh, she's going to Congress. Okay, go drill, baby, drill. Go get the job done. And I'm like, no, that was just the first round of voting. It is a process of elimination. And though I got the most first place votes, as a candidate, you're actually not supposed to gun for first place votes. You got to get a lot of second and third and fourth place votes because in this ranking system, an algorithm with the Dominion computer system, an algorithm takes your vote. If you happen to vote for a person that doesn't end up on top, that computer takes your vote and it distributes it to a different candidate, the candidate that was above that person. And then, so it's a process of elimination. So you have rounds of voting. Well, people aren't going to show up for every round of voting. And when it is complicated, it is convoluted, they think that their vote doesn't count. I won that first round, and then we had another round, and another round, and another round. President Trump came up to Alaska, and he rallied for me. It was the largest gathering of Alaskans in one place ever, and it was electric. It was amazing. He was amazing. He was able to explain ranked choice voting pretty succinctly, and it's kind of difficult to do, isn't it? It's kind of hard to explain to people. He said, this new kind of voting system you have up here, he goes, you realize like your third, fourth most popular candidate can actually win this thing because of the way it works? He knew. That's exactly what happened. At the end of the day, and she happens to be a Democrat. We've never had a Democrat legislator representing us going to Congress. She had the most third and fourth place votes, and I got eliminated then in that last round. Anyway, so of course when I come out saying this isn't good, it's not a good system, and even those who are really honest about why they want it, they'll tell you why they want it, and it's because it makes it easy for Democrats to get in there. And the person who wrote the plan for Alaska is Senator Lisa Murkowski's attorney. They wanted it. It's the only way Lisa Murkowski can stay in the U.S. Senate. She runs with an R by her name, but she never votes with the Republicans. She always votes with the Democrats. And but in order to stay in office, they had to do something different, and this is what they've done different up there. So Alaskans now figured it out. And I knew running all along, I'm like, man, nobody wants that L stamped on their forehead. But I knew all along this wasn't going to work out in our favor. The math wasn't going to work out because as a candidate, what it does is tries to strip away every competitive bone in your body. And I'm into competition and sports. And I mean, it just went against, because you have to be nice to your opponent, because you need your opponent's supporters to like you enough to rank you high enough. But if you're calling out your opponent like they should be called out, well, then the supporters get mad at you and they'll rank you at the very bottom. And it's just, the games that are played are crazy. And in our race also, what the Democrats do is they know to dump a bunch of candidates out there, but then make the top Democrat vote getters actually drop out at the last minute so that there's only one Democrat left. Whereas the Republicans and independents, we all just kept running and running, with good intentions. Well, then we split up the vote, and that's how the one Democrat slipped on through. And that's what's going to happen around the country. It's written, the plan is written for that. It's going to make it impossible for competitive, hardworking, independent, and GOP registered candidates to win. And running, I knew that this was going to happen, and knowing, I don't want another label on my forehead, but I'm going to get that loser label on my forehead, and I did. I'm like, well, I'll take one for the team then, because somebody's got to expose this. And that's exactly what it did. It exposed it. So now we're in the process. We're gathering signatures, and it hasn't been difficult at all to put it back on the ballot so that we can get rid of ranked choice voting, because the vast majority of Alaskans are like, whoa, 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 we don't want this. So, in that sense, it was worth it to run and lose again, like back in 2008, getting second out of 2, sorry. But it was worth it because it does. I have this platform now. I'm like, I was there firsthand. I know how this works. I want to warn you guys not to allow it to happen. What it'll do in Idaho, obviously, is allow the liberals to come in, decimate the middle class, because the middle class is reliant on natural resource development, and that is what Idaho is so rich in, and in a lot of respects is known for. But shutting down your mineral development and more of the timber and everything else, that's what they want to do, and that's what they'll be able to do if this voting system is adopted.
Yep, it's pretty frightening. That's the issue as a party chair I dream about every night.
Yeah.
It's not the fact we don't have a presidential primary, now we have to caucus. It's not the fact we have drag queen shows with kids being lured onto stage. It's not the ESG, the SEL, and everything else that's been through. Those are the balls in the air to keep our eyes off of the overarching ranked choice voting. And a lot of people here are pretty savvy about elections, and they have been for a long time. And we definitely, in my county, we have some folks from Custer County here, very small population. We do hand count. Can you believe that? Oh my gosh, I know, we're novel.
Let me interrupt you and tell you, in Alaska, they outlawed hand counting. That's part of this ranked choice voting too. Everything has to go through that Dominion computer system. We have villages, native villages, where maybe 5 people vote. Well, the poll, you can't count it. You got to send it down to Anchorage, make it go through the system, let that algorithm take that person's vote and give it to somebody else. It's just ridiculous.
Right, and that's one thing we really need to look at here are the election systems that we use as well. And there are people, Kathy Thompson here, she's been very involved. She's from Twin Falls, and she's been very involved in looking at the systems we might incorporate, and that's good. So we've got people who are very knowledgeable, and people are awake, and that's a great sign. But as far as Alaska goes, my sons traveled to Alaska recently, and they went to the Capitol and saw your picture everywhere, but there was a handout when they walked in, which they brought home to me, and it was showing the demographic of the people who supported ranked choice voting and how it has come out of favor with most of the population. But it's the younger folks that are the demographic that's really looking at ranked choice voting as a new way to get a lot of their agenda through. And a lot of the folks, in their 50s, 40s, and older, they get the idea that it's a bad way to go, and it's going to be very confusing. But the ranked choice voting, as far as fighting Reclaim Idaho just brought this initiative in. Soros is focusing, as I hear, and it's pretty much the Colorado Rocky Mountain Heist all over again. And that's the same playbook that they're using. And when I first heard they were having meetings up in Sandpoint at a library with the Democrat chair of the state, and they said, we are going to flip Idaho. So we know the battle is real, and that's why it's so important that you continue to speak. And now there are other states where ranked choice voting is being entertained, and hopefully we can serve as a model to those other states that we can stop it. Now, one other route should, in the event that it goes through, because it's just a majority. It isn't 2/3, it's a majority that they have to have in November of next year for that election. But the legislature can stop it. So one thing about an initiative, once it goes through, the legislature in this state, and we can stop it. So it's very important to make sure we have conservative legislators, and we have had a few here stand up. But that's really our last line of defense in this state if that initiative gets through.
It is, because in Alaska too, deep red state of Alaska, we asked our lawmakers, our legislators, why don't you guys do something about this? They wouldn't. They put it back on the people because they were wimpy about it. You know what? And a lot of them had just gotten elected under the system. So they were fine with it, until they lose and learn a lesson. But our lawmakers wouldn't do anything about it. So the people took it upon ourselves, having the initiative and the initiative drives and getting the signatures, putting it on the ballot and trying to explain to people that, okay, there is something that we can do about it. We don't have to just sit back and it wasn't broke, so why did anybody try to fix it? That's what people need to ask themselves too. And when you run into people who say, well, it doesn't sound that bad, I want to be able to have my say in each candidate. No, it wasn't broken, the one man, one vote system, traditional in American elections. So why would anybody think that something so fundamental to the democracy exercised in our republic, why would that have to be changed? You had the best example, though, to explain to people, too, when we talked about what if you had to rank the colleges in Idaho?
Well, let's just do it.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So I'm going to ask all of you, with ranked choice voting, your favorite college. Okay, BSU wins first. Everybody loves the Palomino, and the blue turf is a winner. Okay, so BSU comes in with the highest vote. Yeah, Smurf turf. And then the next one is the Vandals, University of Idaho. Okay, that's one comes in second. Third comes in BYU. And fourth comes in Idaho State University in Pocatello. So you all have just voted in which university you like the best, and BSU won. But however, they only have like 47%. So that's true. So now what happens is ISU, who's number 4, drops off. Everybody had a ballot with 4 choices, and you have to rank them, which is really bad because some people may not even like that university. Maybe they failed there. Maybe they were kicked out of school. But now they've got to vote for them. Now they've got to vote for a university they just don't like. But anyway, you have to fill out the 1, 2, 3, 4, and there goes ISU. Those votes go up. But ISU doesn't like BSU because everybody knows what prima donnas they can be. And so with their blue turf and their nice Bronco, now they're going to give them to either BYU or they're going to give them to the Vandals, University of Idaho. And then what's going to happen when they, we're down to BYU, and then they drop off, who are they going to more than likely give them to? We're going to more than likely, they would have put in the University of Idaho over BSU. So that's how it works. And everybody in their heart of heart knows that the BSU probably did win it. But what's interesting, Neil and Julie, they were on the radio the other day, and I've been listening to them, and they said they had someone call in and had a bunch of little kids look at lollipops. But they didn't rank them, which Julie was very much aware. She was hip that this guy was trying to confuse the audience. But they had one piece of paper, and they put their first choice on one. Then they got a different piece of paper for another one instead of having to rank them. So there's going to be a lot of different scenarios out there. But the real question is, was Alaska able to audit this at all? How in the world would we ever audit? And in Idaho, for the legislators that are here, they have to audit so many counties after every election. There's no way in the world.
No.
There's no hanging chads. You just got a bunch of ballots and numbers, and I don't see any way to audit that election.
No, so there was no auditing of it. In fact, our Supreme Court, though, ruled that, well, there were illegalities in the election, but it still stood. I mentioned that the Democrats were smart enough to, okay, you explained through, ranking colleges, and that was only 4. Try having 50 candidates in there and going through that kind of process. It's ridiculous. But with the ranking or with the auditing potential, or you would think that you could, but you can't. And again, it's a computer system. It's not like you can go in there and make sure that it's hand counted correctly. There were so many shenanigans in it that our Supreme Court said, well, wait a minute, the Democrats, as I had mentioned, they had the other Democrat, the top vote getter, get out of there at the last minute so that there was only one Democrat left, and then they wouldn't split the vote and she'd slip on in there. But they weren't smart enough to follow the right timeline, so they missed the timeline. They missed the deadline to drop somebody out, and they dropped that person out. But the Division of Elections, the bureaucrats, still let it go forward. And then it got certified. Well, once it's certified, even though our Supreme Court said, wait, that's not right, that's illegal. They can't drop out after the deadline. Anyway, but it still stands. So, and I use that example of shenanigans and illegality practice there to add to, we're compounding how complicated, how unnecessarily complicated this is. And that is one of the reasons that you need to ask, why would anyone try to change this? Could it be in Idaho that they need to change the voting system because they know you too well? They know that you're hardworking, you're independent, you're patriotic. You will put Idaho first, America first. You know what's coming with their agenda. It is the fundamental transformation of our states and of our country. It's been promised. It's underway. Well, they can't get there if they let you be you. They have to transform you and your voting system and the outcomes of your election. And that's what ranked choice voting ultimately results in.
So how can we stop it? Aside from meeting with groups, and I've been going around the state a lot speaking against it. Again, this is the overarching issue that I'm really worried about. We lose our state in this election scheme or election fraud, and this is pretty fraught, could be fraught with fraud. What would you suggest? I mean, billboards, a lot of strategies have come up, decline to vote or decline to sign, some kind of slogan, decline to sign the petition. There's a lot. What did they do in Alaska, or did it come in awful fast?
It came in really fast. People had no idea what we were going to be hit with, and that's why I'm on the trail warning people. I don't want you guys to have to learn that painful lesson in your state, because it's really tough to undo the damage that the left is going to do to you while they have that power that you didn't know that you were giving them under this new kind of voting system if you allow it to happen. So people have to do their own homework on it. I mean, I go back to why it's kind of like crud. I'm going to have that L stamped on my forehead. Then I said, I know when I go out there and I start preaching against it, they're going to say, well, of course she doesn't like it. She lost under it. And then, they distract me and I have to say, no, I didn't like it to start with. Remember, I said blah, 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 and then we get off track and the debate gets convoluted then. But you just don't want to have to learn that lesson that Alaska has learned, and now we're trying to undo, because our legislator now, our congresswoman, your former congressman, Russ Fulcher, he texted me a couple times going, oh my gosh, our guys were sitting right next to your new congresswoman from Alaska, and why did Alaska send her here? She votes against all the resource development. She wants to lock up everything, and trying to undo that kind of damage because they got another vote in Congress. They got more power for Biden's election. Undoing that is difficult.
So do you think you'll be successful in a couple of years?
I do.
Okay.
This go around, we'll have it on the ballot thanks to enough signatures of voters putting it on the ballot so that we can vote against ranked choice voting, and we're using rid the rank. We're trying to rid the state of ranking. And but it is a 2-year process because our lawmakers didn't do anything about it, had they? And so President Trump, he's called me a couple times on this specifically because he's kind of worried about Alaska even. He's like, of all states, I'm not even going to get your electoral votes. I'm like, I know, under this process, you're not. And so he's really paying attention to Idaho, to all these other states who some people are kind of flirting with this disaster. He and the other candidates, if any of the other candidates are paying attention to how important this is, they're looking into what's going on here and these other states that are kind of flirting with it.
So how many other states are you aware of that are pursuing ranked choice voting initiatives?
Well, the snakes are in every state trying to slither it through every state. But Arizona has been pretty aggressive about it, unfortunately. And Idaho is the one that's front and center right now, I think, because they've kicked off their drive, and again, they make it sound like it's so democratic and it's so fair. But there are quite a few states, but Arizona and Idaho are the ones that I think most people are paying attention to.
Good. Well, the fight is definitely on, without a doubt. And Reclaim, they're going to boast a little bit of a win today, because they might have got a couple thousand signatures. But we will be making sure that people fight against that. I think we actually have some people who went and got a job with Reclaim to see how the process worked in North Idaho. So that's
like
kind of fun.
Project Veritas.
Yeah, Project Veritas 101, yeah. So everybody has a cell phone, everybody can record. So anyway, that's kind of exciting. Some of you might want to go check out working for Reclaim. Just don't turn in the petitions at the end of the day. So anyhow, it is definitely going to be a fight. I think Idaho is ready to take on this challenge. And again, our legislature just passed this prohibition of ranked choice voting along party lines. Yeah. Every Republican voted to support the prohibition. The Democrats did not. But, I've heard some rumblings. There are a few legislators. Well, that is kind of an interesting idea. So all of you over here in Southeast Idaho, you make sure you call your legislators and tell them you're adamantly opposed to bringing ranked choice voting into this state. Because even if they get a little bit of a word from a friend, it's not really a bad idea, well, maybe we should try it, you have got to do your due diligence and call and make sure they do not flip and decide to support that.
Right.
So do you have any other ideas on how to fight it? I mean, I know united with other states is helpful.
Well, on a national level, and you helped get this through, the Republican Party voted unanimously,
yes.
The leadership of the party, the Central Committee, to against ranked choice voting. Right. So, you can go to that also. That's a tool to be used. I think what we need to do, though, is to keep talking about the big picture. What a change in the traditional voting system in America, which ranked choice voting would be, what that results in. And then, you ratchet that down to those changes, how they'll impact every single one of us, all of your neighbors, all of your friends, just reminding them. Let me go back to resource development too, how the left's agenda, of course, is to make us be reliant on China, make us be reliant on foreign countries to develop, and then we have to purchase from them like oil and gas. We're hat in hand begging some of our enemies to develop oil and gas for us when our states have, all we need to do is turn on the spigot. Alaska has hundreds of trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. We have billions and billions of barrels of oil just sitting there, just waiting to go down our pipeline. The pipeline's built, it's ready to go. Biden turns off the spigot, and then he goes over and he asks the Saudis, he asks OPEC nations to develop for us. What's going on in Idaho with lithium and with cobalt. Mm-hmm. Cobalt, the value of cobalt in the next decade is supposed to increase 500%. And what happens in Idaho? They shut down cobalt development. These things that are going on, when you have more and more lawmakers, more elected officials on the wrong side of these issues, which ranked choice voting will result in, people need to understand the impacts. There's an inherent link between resource development, energy, and prosperity, and energy and security. So if you remind people that just that one specific category of what our elected officials are in charge of, resource development, how that will be impacted, and how America, our solvency and our sovereignty is at stake if we don't have our natural resources developed, if we can't be independent with our energy supplies, because that touches everything that we touch. Everything that you need in civilized society is contingent upon independence when it comes to your energy sources. They're trying to do away with that. It's so clear to me. It's so obvious and transparent what they're doing. They know what they're doing. So to explain to people how the changes that would result from ranked choice voting, because people who are on the wrong side of all these issues, they're going to get in there. They're going to have that power. That's the transformation of America that is underway.
Right, and Idaho is a big resource state. In fact, the cobalt is in Lemhi County. I was a legislator, and they have a huge deposit in Jervois, an Australia company. They were getting things going. They were getting housing put up, and then the Chinese dropped the market, and prices went down, and so they had to stop. And hopefully they'll get started again, because we have in this area, Idaho National Laboratory. They look at every battery in the United States. They do testing on them. They understand cobalt. They understand lithium. They understand thorium, and we have thorium in this state as well. So there's a lot of strategic metals, strategic resources. We have to be able to develop. We do it better than anybody else in the world.
Because where are we getting our resources today?
China.
Like 98%.
You're supposed to say it like Trump.
Yeah,
China.
Our pharmaceutical ingredients, about 98% of them, they're coming from China. We're letting it slip between our fingers what America was. America was founded on, we know that the freedom that was so desired, and that's why we became a new nation. But we were the only nation, too, that was ever built upon private property rights and natural resource development, because the resource development would pay for the services that government would supply the people if they agreed upon wanting that service from government. Those are some of the things that made America different. And because too many on the left, too many who have taken over, they don't want us to be different. They want one world order. They do. They want one government, and that's where we're headed. And resource development is just absolutely key to their agenda.
It is, and it's definitely key to the future of Idaho. And as a sovereign state, we should be tapping in on those resources, without a doubt. Now, another issue I wanted to talk about is just a little bit, and I know that this is going around the states as well, as far as the presidential primary. It's going to be very exciting, and we'll just touch on this for a minute, and then maybe we'll take a few questions. We kind of talked about that with Kara. But anyway, the presidential primary, we had ours removed by accident, so It was run through the legislature, and it was a flawed bill, and it was signed into law, which essentially took away our March primary, but didn't put it in May, and so we don't have one at all. So we're going to have a caucus, and it's going to be a firehouse caucus, and we have 12 candidates already that are looking, hopefully, to come to Idaho. I've been contacted by about 6 of them, and we will be the 5th state. So there's four states in February.
That's right.
We would be March 2nd. We would be the number 5 state, which makes it very exciting and makes us very relevant on the national stage. Yes. I just found out, and I don't know if you know anything about it, but I thank you.
That's big.
Thank you. I think we're very excited about doing that. I would much rather have the party run our choice for president instead of the state. I don't know why, and I was a legislator, but I kind of think people can do a pretty good job when they put their minds to it. But some of you just heard in the news, I think Senator Nichols sent me some information, and Maria Nate, our secretary, about Utah just opted out from doing their presidential primary, and they're going to do a caucus as well. So that's exciting. I think that's very exciting. So as you hear more information about this caucus, just know it'll be fast. It'll be a single round. It won't be multiple rounds. It will be just an hour, maybe 2. So those of you who have worked in the 2012 caucus before we actually closed our primary and had a presidential primary in March, we're going to have fun with this. And it's going to work. So your team with the Idaho GOP is working on it. Kira is on top of making sure we have our locations sought out. And we are going to have ballots, paper, and then we're going to hand count, and then we're going to call them in. So we're going to show everybody how we can do this.
And let's hope that the candidates do show up.
I think they are.
It's extremely important.
Yes, and I know with the last RNC meeting, we were talking about the cost to file, and I said, well, we're going to charge $50,000 each. And then Brent Reagan from Kootenai County, our chairman there, we're always trying to strategize how to get folks here. We're going to give them $25,000 back if they come and meet with any of you guys. We're going to give them a discounted visit, and I've already got a lot of folks talking to me about coming. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll be exciting, and hopefully we can have more venues like this and have a presidential candidate come in, and let's hear them all out. I mean, that's the idea. Exactly. Let's hear what they all have to offer. So I'm excited, and we do want to be relevant in the West. Hopefully we can keep ranked choice voting out so we can continue to do so. But do you have any parting words before? Maybe Kira, where's Kira at? Well, where's she at? Oh, there you are. Are we going to take a few questions? Just we'll just do about 3, maybe 3, and then we've got some real fun things to do. Okay, so is there anything else you want to share with them about your visit here and how wonderful these folks are?
You are so wonderful, and that's the thing. Idaho is an amazing, very, very special state. You guys stand out from the rest because of your independence. It's like you don't need government on your back. You need it just on your side, not harming you, and remembering what the federal government was set up to do. It was set up just to protect your rights, not to take your rights away, and not to provide all these services when the state or the community, if it's their will for those services to be provided, the local level is the appropriate level, not the feds. I think because Idaho is kind of known for that kind of independence, and it bodes so well for the character of the people who live here and the work ethic and how y'all voluntarily take care of each other when people are in need. You don't need government taking from you to give to somebody else. You can do that better than politicians in far off bubbles in DC or anywhere else as they make the decisions for you. I think Idaho is known for you guys knowing that you can do it better than government can. So America needs you to not go the way of some of these other states and to not go the way of the transformation that is underway nationally. We need Idaho to be the strongest, to be the most independent, to be the ones who say enough is enough of this control that's being taken away from the people. The will of the people is so ignored today. And I think Idaho is in a perfect position to be the leader of that movement with the other states to say, we don't have to just roll over and let it happen to us. You're a fireball, too. You guys, the GOP is lucky to have her.
Thank you.
And in fact, last night we were talking about ranked choice voting, and I was just getting all riled up, and I was looking at her going, you should be the one talking tomorrow night. You're as riled up as I am about this, and you need to be doing the talking. So, yeah, they're lucky to have you.
Yeah, we're wound up.
Well, we know what's at stake.
We do know what's at stake, and we have children, and we have grandchildren, and we have, our future, and we want to save it for them. And as you said, we have always been known. And when I came here over 30 years ago, how conservative this state was, and I was so proud to be a part of it. We have to save it. And I appreciate you so much coming out here. And we had Carrie Lake a month ago talking about election integrity and how to save our state. But it is so important, the message, and I know it's hard on you to travel. It was a long flight for her to get here from Alaska through Seattle, and I know it's quite the bit of travel, and I hate getting on planes as it is already, but you do it all the time, and I appreciate you so much. You have no idea what an honor it is for me to be sitting here with you, years later, 13 years later after 2010, I never would have thought I would have been on a stage with you talking about the socialism that's coming at us hard and fast. But I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to give my mic to Kira, and we'll take a couple of questions, and we're going to have a lot of fun in a minute.
There's a lot of confusion about this process of when you fill out your ballot. And I wanted to see if you could clarify that a little bit. And what specifically it is when you're ranking things and you go into these second rounds, are people, voting a second time, like they have to fill out another ballot? Or is it just their simple ballot, they vote once, so they have to do everything down ballot? What happens in ranked choice voting if, let's say that there's 4 candidates, and I, as a good solid Republican, only want to vote for the conservative candidate, and I don't want to rank the other 3 because I don't support them, and I feel like it doesn't represent me as a voter, and so I leave those blank, okay? Can you speak to a little bit about how damaging that can be and how people can really be left out of the process?
That is a great question, and the question is still being asked in Alaska, but since it's the votes, the ballots aren't audited, we don't know how many people actually left. We don't know the exact number of people who actually left those other boxes unchecked because the ballot language says there's a difference between can and may. There's language on some ballots early on that had said, you may vote for your favorite candidate, you may rank your candidate. But then other language was you can vote for your favorite candidate and then the others. Nothing ever said that, nothing required you to. But then there were officials in Division of Elections saying, no. The instructions were, this is ranked choice voting. If you're going to participate, you got to rank them. Well, what if you don't want to rank the Democrats because you don't want to mess with them? You don't want any of them in there. You just want to give your vote to we don't know how many of those ballots got thrown out because the bureaucracy gets involved in this also. Your Division of Elections gets involved. And they have a lot of flexibility, too, in calling the shots. They could say, if you refuse to obey the instructions and you don't rank, in our case, the 50 candidates to start with and then on down to the 4, then your ballot's invalid. So something like that has got to be clarified before, because we're still asking the question, and it's been a year. It's been over a year. We still don't have that answer. That goes back to your question, though, about the auditing of it and even the possibilities of auditing. And you've seen on a national level what's happened when You challenge the election and you go to jail, is what to some of the guys. But you see what happens when you're questioning and you're wanting audits, and the states or those controlling the election say, no, you can't get into those computers. You can't audit. It's a mess, and that makes it even more of a mess. And as your question about filling in the ballots, did you mean like in the first round? Because every round of voting, of course, you have a different ballot with a different lineup, and they're in a different order because some of them got eliminated. Is that different weeks? Yes, different weeks. It goes on and on and on. And then when you have mail-in ballots, and they let the mail-in ballots come in like 6 weeks later, it took forever. And I always thought, what a waste of public resources, of the money involved in elections like this. Yeah, it's not just once. You come back a month later and your local communities set up the polling booths again. And then a month later, it goes on and on. Yeah, I forgot to make that point. That makes it even worse.
Hi, I have a question. This is a little bit at the national level. It seems like in the last election, we saw so much mail fraud, stuffing ballot boxes. We know it happened. We know they messed with the machines. We had 1,000 ballots voted on an empty lot in Nevada. California's lost. You know, on and on and on. What is the GOP nationally doing to tackle these problems? Because obviously the courts are a failure. The people, I don't know that they understand. How do we tackle Mark Zuckerberg coming in and doing what he did, which was illegal? How are we tackling all this?
That's a good question about what is the national GOP doing, and I don't know what kind of relationship you have with those characters, but I've been butting heads with the Republican Party my entire career, and it's 30 years now, because too many of them are the officials who run the party, they're more interested in titles and power and control of the people, which is like, no, that's the opposite of what you should be in there for. So the national party, they're not doing enough. Obviously, our state party didn't do enough because we're still on that trajectory that's still a very scary place that we're headed. That's why, and I'll probably get so in trouble for this, but that's why, I like to give, if I contribute to help a candidate directly to the candidate and skip the party, because I don't trust what's going on with an organization like that. And when you've been there, when you've been on the inside and you know that inside baseball stuff, it really makes you step back and say, oh, if people only knew, yeah. And I don't want to badmouth them all because there's some real good ethical people in there, but nope, too many rhinos who are running the party, and they're letting it happen,
Hi. I think in Idaho there's like 2 or 3 or 4 lawsuits against legislation that had been passed within the last session. And the Democrats, they always go to the court and they always file a lawsuit if they don't like something. Yeah. Why can't Republicans file a lawsuit against ranked choice voting?
Yeah. Or a lot of other things. Why do we let the left hijack all the processes? It makes them look like they're smarter than we are. They're not smarter. They may be craftier, and they're also obsessed with partisan politics where, the rest of us, you're living your life, you're running your businesses, you're raising your kids, you're making your communities better. You're not in that inside baseball stuff. A lot of the Democrats, they live for this because they live for control of the people. So yeah, that's a tool that could and should be used. That means then that we put pressure on our lawmakers to get behind a drive to file suit against ranked choice voting or anything else that we don't like that it seems that the Democrats capitalize on. Now, back to the question right before yours, though, about there was the suggestion about the shenanigans that go on in elections, and there really are. When I was governor, I remember looking at the voter rolls, knowing that so many things were askew. Talking to Division of Elections about the voter roll, thousands and thousands of people. why don't we ever scrub the thing? What, there's dead people on it. Why don't we clean this up? Oh, and you're talking to bureaucrats, and they're all about job security, and they don't want to, they love the status quo. And President Reagan had said the status quo, that's Latin for the mess we're in. And they like the status quo, they're fine with it. So I was trying to always make a point that election integrity is the most important thing when it comes to, within a republic, exercising any kind of democracy. It's got to be election integrity. So working with my division of elections, let me give you one example. There was a voter registered for like 20 years, always voted in Alaska, but always voted by mail. He was Barack Obama's right-hand man in the White House, voting in Alaska. And we're like, he's not Alaskan. Has he ever been here? Well, I guess like 20 years ago, like in a college internship or something, he had been to Alaska. He had lived there, I guess, worked there, registered, but had only been back to Alaska one time, and that was to party at some wedding. But in those 20 years, he got to vote as an Alaskan resident. And ironically, isn't it, that it was Obama's right-hand man there in the White House? So I got to use that example, and it still didn't resonate enough to affect the change that needed to be made. The guy was called out. He was busted by the press, but the press, mainstream media, they're not going to be on our side on even something that's as blatant as that. But an example of the obvious things that are underway, underfoot, they're right there, you can see them, and still not enough is being done about it. Now, those people who are trying to do something about it, they do get crucified in the press, and they're called election deniers. Why are Republicans called election deniers when we have how many sound bites of all these Democrats? Hillary Clinton, she still says, Trump's illegitimate president. They've denied it more than but they hijack, not just in the court system, opportunities to sue for outcomes that they want, but they get to hijack the verbiage, the language that's used, and the terms, the definitions. They get to define us as election deniers when we're just wanting election integrity. They've been election deniers, but heaven forbid you say that. Right.
Right. Okay, last question, and then...
Yeah, my big concern is right now we have a bunch of like-minded people. This next generation has been indoctrinated in colleges, high school, Common Core and it makes it sound like everybody's a winner, and that's kind of these next generations. So that's what really scares me to death. What can we do to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, and all the COVID shutdown stuff with the schools, that was a part of that also, because, there are some kids now graduating high school who they didn't ever really get to go through a traditional, normal high school experience at all because things were shut down and nothing has ever been the same. So that's contributed to a lot of young people not, or they're learning so much differently than the rest of us. Between that and social media, of course, it's a different kind of upbringing. It comes down to the parents, and it comes down to we doing our job and not expecting culture, society to do it for us, because you're right, they're going to screw it up. Our society, our culture will screw up our kids. We have to be the ones on top of this. And that's why it's so important, though, that we don't cede all that control. We don't cede it to the government, to local school districts that local school boards, a lot of them are being taken over by radical leftists because too many people, we're too busy. Like I said, we're raising kids, running families and stuff, and don't have time. Somebody else will do that job. Well, look who's doing that job. And then, then the allowance of this indoctrination is going on. And it's so clear. It is so blatant. It comes down to the parents. My dad was a school teacher, and he always said, the best homework that I can give my kids, the best homework for a kid is you sit down there with your intact family and have dinner with your family every night. And you talk about your day, and the parent has opportunity to just instill some common sense in the kid. That we do have to get back to that. I asked one of my kids the other day, I said, she was asking me about an issue, and I asked her, I said, oh yeah, where'd you get that article, or where'd you read that? And she said, oh, you know, a headline came across or something. And I said, well, what do you know about it? And she was on the right side of the issue just because she has common sense, and she knew that it was something about government trying to take more control over people. But it was quite telling to me that she said, because she had expressed that, well, that's how a lot of people get their news, unfortunately, is it's a headline that literally, physically, it splashes across some social media thing that they're looking at, and they only see that headline. Well, you know that headline is going to be erroneous. It's not going to reflect truth. So, yeah, they're not getting their news in the appropriate places. It has to be the family. It has to go back to the family so government can't take control over our families, or we're really lost.
We are lost. Well, you're going to have to come back again. I can tell. We're going to have you back again. Well, I'd like to give our guest a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are. This is going to be fun. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.